Welcome back to the Scaredy Cat Guide, my friends. My name is Jenny, and today we are actually talking about two rides, Dumbo the Flying Elephant and the Magic Carpets of Aladdin in Disney's Magic Kingdom. If you're new here, this is the channel where we talk about theme parks and anxiety. We talk about sensory issues and really just anything that you might want to know if you're an anxious rider like I am. Now we are covering two rides today because they are almost exactly the same attraction. There are a couple of little differences here and we're going to talk about it all. So without further ado, let's dive into those details. These very similar attractions contain spinning, a pretty rough ride system, and in the case of the Magic Carpets of Aladdin, some water-squirting camels. So let's talk about that spinning. Now what we have here is a lot like what you'd find on a carnival ride. Just like a carousel, your ride vehicle will simply orbit around the base at a steady speed. There is some up and down movement that is controlled by the control stick at the front of your vehicle, and in the case of Aladdin, the pitch of your vehicle will also be managed by the riders in the back. We'll get into specifics when we talk about the ride vehicles. Now, it is also important to note that even if you decide to keep your vehicle all the way at the bottom and not deal with that control stick at all, both of these ride vehicles will rise to the top on its own at the end of the ride. Now, you'll only be at this full height for a few seconds, but I could definitely see it being pretty unexpected, especially if you're wanting to get on and really not go that high. Again, you can see the heights that we're talking about here from the outside of the ride. It's not too terribly high or anything like that. Just don't get on thinking that it's like the teacups where you can really not spin at all if you want to the entire time, because you will reach that full height at the end regardless of what you do. And once again, in the case of the Magic Carpets of Aladdin, your ride vehicle will also tilt forwards and backwards a few times as it reaches that top height. Now, all this to say, even though you do have control over most of the ride experience for both of these attractions, you do have those few seconds at the end where you are not in control and the ride will do what it's going to do, which will not be a problem for a lot of people. But of course, I just wanted to let you guys know so that you can be prepared. Now, moving on, let's talk about that rough ride system. Now, for both of these attractions, this is simply the result of both of these being older rides. Now, this isn't anything crazy. It's just a little bit bumpy, especially on descending at the end of the ride. Again, nothing super crazy, but certainly not the smoothest thing in the world. Now, really quickly, I did want to touch on those water spraying camels. Now, it's pretty easy to hop on this ride without realizing that you may or may not get wet. There really is only one camel that can spray you on the ride itself. He's sitting off to the side, and depending on how high you are, you may get pretty darn wet when you pass him by. Just a little tip, if you really want to avoid getting sprayed, try to get your ride vehicle all the way to the top as quickly as possible. Now, of course, this is not a ton of water, but be prepared, you may just get a little bit wet. Now let's talk about those ride vehicles. So starting with Dumbo the Flying Elephant, what we have here are individual elephant ride vehicles that seat about 2 to 3 guests per car. Now the Magic Carpets of Aladdin has a slightly different ride vehicle, and what we have here are individual magic carpets that seat about 4 to 6 guests total in 2 rows. Now, the real distinction between these two ride vehicles is that on the Magic Carpets, you actually can control both the pitch and the up and down movement of the Magic Carpet. So if you're sitting in the front, you will have that basic control stick. It looks just like what you find over on Dumbo. But if you're sitting in the back, you actually have this lovely little Scaredy button that you can press that will control the tilting backwards and forwards of this ride vehicle. Now, it doesn't tilt to any extreme angle or anything like that. It really just is a very fun little addition to the movement of the ride, but depending on whether you're sitting in the front or the back, you'll get to control 2 different elements of this attraction. Now, both of these rides have a simple shared seat belt for each row that gives you a little more room than a standard lap bar. Really, it's a lot like a seat belt you'd find in a car, and to me, the restraints were not all that confining. Now, moving right along, let's talk about that ride duration. So both of these rides clock in at 1 minute and 30 seconds. This is pretty on par with other carnival style rides. So even if these rides give you the jitters for any reason, just know that it is a very, very short experience and you'll be off of it in only about 90 seconds. And now that you have all the facts, let's actually go hop in line. I'm going to show you footage from both of these rides and they're very, very similar, but we're going to point out those key differences. So, you ready? Let's go. Now you'll find these rides in different sides of the park, so we will start off with Dumbo the Flying Elephant. Now you'll find the entrance to this attraction in the Storybook Circus area of Magic Kingdom. Now this queue actually is pretty interesting, and personally, I love it. So you'll find the entrance right outside of the ride itself. You can see the ride vehicles and really get a good look if you're trying to decide whether to ride or not. And very quickly after entering this outdoor line, you will find yourself inside. Now the line will just snake back and forth for a little bit before you come upon a cast member. Now this is where things get interesting. There is actually a very cool indoor playground in this queue. Now you do not have to go into the playground if you don't want to, or you can even play in the playground if you're not planning on riding Dumbo. So if you would like to go inside, you will tell a cast member and you can step on in with your kids and have a great time, play for as long as you want to. Then when you're done, you can step out of the line, just alert the cast member and they will send you on your way. Now the rest of the queue is very basic. You'll just wind around the actual ride system and wait for a cast member to send you out onto the ride. Now once the gate opens, you'll get to pick your elephant and take a seat. Don't forget to buckle your seatbelt and the ride can commence. Now the ride itself is very basic here. As we've established, you're just going to go basically on a very brief carousel ride around the base. Now of course you do have that control stick, which means you can decide whether you want to go up or down throughout the duration of the ride, but don't forget, like I said, at the very end, you will go all the way to the top, regardless of whether you touch that control stick. And a very brief 90 seconds later, this ride will come to an end. Now, of course, exiting this attraction is very straightforward. All you do is exit the gate and you'll head out right back into Storybook Circus. Now let's talk about the magic carpets of Aladdin. This queue is a lot more simplistic. Now you will find the entrance to this attraction in Adventureland, and just like many of the other carnival style rides, the queue is just right outside of the attraction. So all you will do when you walk into the queue is wind around the outside of the ride. Once again, you can see everything from the queue, which is fantastic. And once you come to a cast member, they will send you into a lane. So unlike Dumbo here, you actually are assigned to specific carpets. So pay attention to what number you're standing on, and when that gate opens, you will find your assigned carpet and take a seat. And very similarly, once this ride takes off, you will just find yourself going in a circle orbiting that ride system. It really feels almost exactly like Dumbo. Of course, that key difference here is the pitch of the carpet can actually tilt forwards and backwards depending on whether or not the person in your back seat is touching that scarab button. So there's just a little bit more of a dynamic motion with this attraction. And of course, like I said, you will have those squirting camels that may sprinkle you with a little bit of water as you ride by. And once again, after about 90 seconds, this ride will come to an end. You'll be directed off of the ride, and just like Dumbo, you'll head out the gate and find yourself immediately back into Adventureland. And there we have it. What do you think about these two rides? Now, even though they are very similar, they also have some key differences. Now, personally, I love the Magic Carpets of Aladdin, and I think it's a little bit better of a ride. It's just a little bit newer. I like the theming just a little bit better personally, and it's got that little bit of dynamic motion where you can tilt backwards and forwards as well as going up and down. Now, they are basically the same ride experience, but personally, I do prefer the Magic Carpets of Aladdin. However, when it comes to the queue, you really cannot beat that playground on Dumbo the Flying Elephant. We visit this playground all the time, even if we're not riding the ride. And just as a reminder, you do have to go through the queue about halfway through that queue to get to the playground. You can't bypass the line just to get into the playground, unfortunately. But it is well worth the wait. It usually doesn't take that long, and it's a fabulous playground. So go check it out. But I would love to hear what you guys think about these rides. Which one do you prefer? Which one is your favorite? Don't forget to let me know in the comments. Now, as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, stick around, stay a while. We would love to have you in our little community of anxious riders. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.